John
and Cam.
and on today's episode we're going to go over our top 5 video games that influence and kind of like from our childhood. It's going to be the games that when they came out and we started playing them, it really kind of led us on the path that like led us to today, the type of games we like to play still today. Basically the games that influence our childhood.
But corrupted us.
Yeah, or corrupted. That works too. Especially once you get to my list. There's some games that a little questionable that I was playing back in the... But by today's standards, they're like G-rated games.
Yeah.
But before we really get into it, I just want to take a quick second. We did get our Facebook page up. Now Showing does have a Facebook page, so make sure to stay up to date on not just the YouTube channel, but we'll be putting some posts from my friend Brandon. He does a lot of reviews on different types of movies. He does do horror movies, so of course we will be focusing on the horror movies. But he does do everything from dramas, comedies, action. So if you want to get some other input, check out his reviews, and of course check out our Facebook page. We'll be keeping you up to date on what we're doing, some things that we're interested in, just another way that you can get to know us and stay in touch with us. But with that being said, like I said, today's top 5 is going to be a video game. Like we said, we want to kind of vary this, horror movies, collectibles. So this one we're kind of focused on some video games. And Cameron is going to start us off with his number 5.
Well, I sort of cheated, kind of, with my number 5. A little bit of a cop-out, because when you're breaking down 5 games, when you've played literally hundreds, maybe even thousands of video games from a young age, started playing, like I said before in our first video, around 5 years old, and we were trying to keep this to a point, a certain point in time. We didn't want to go up to too recent. We figured early teen years. So you take even from 5 years old to the early teen years, there's a lot of games to choose from. So for number 5, this was really hard to limit down. I picked 2 games, so I'll kind of go over both briefly. But the 2 games I put at number 5, the first one being Twisted Metal. The Twisted Metal series, I was introduced to that from a good friend of mine. His name's Cody. I actually had never heard of the series. One day I went to his house for a sleepover. He was playing this crazy game where you could play as these insane, over-the-top characters that drove these vehicles that had missiles, bombs, all types of weapons attached to them. And basically, the objective of the game is to destroy all the other vehicles throughout these maps and be the last one standing in like a demolition derby style. And you could also play co-op with a friend and play through a campaign in which you would play through levels, destroying other vehicles and being the last man or woman standing. And I became obsessed with this game. We played it all the time. We would stay up all night playing, and even when the sequel came out, Twisted Metal 2, we played the heck out of that game. Our favorite map on the sequel was a map that was in Paris in France, and you could actually destroy the Eiffel Tower. For those of you who played it, there was a sort of an old school Easter egg where you could destroy the tower, actually climb and elevate up it, and ride down the arc of the tower. So a lot of memories with Twisted Metal, but I won't go too in depth with that one because I also have another game at number 5. My other game at number 5, I know this is kind of the generic pick, it's everyone's pick, but I would be shorting myself if I didn't bring up It's a Mario, right? The Mario series. But I'm going to limit it down to one game in particular, the one I feel I played most as a kid, and
2.
that is...
Super Mario Brothers 2?
That is not the one. Mario 2, even as a kid, I thought that game was dumb, and trust me, I played a lot of dumb stuff back then. But I'm going to go with Super Mario Bros. 3. That was the game, that really just took it to a whole other level, whether you talk about the cheat codes, the secrets, warping to other worlds, the whistle, the different boss battles. It had the coolest levels, and it just kept you playing all the time, whether it be on land, sea, in the air. There was nothing you couldn't do in that game. And me and friends, my brother, my stepsister, we would play all the time. So Super Mario Bros. 3 is definitely my favorite in the series as a kid, and definitely shaped a lot of platform games for me to come after that. So I know I kind of cheated putting 2 in at number 5, but those are my 2. Twisted Metal, Super Mario Bros. 3.
I can definitely agree with that. I will say that Super Mario did not make my list. Super Mario and Sonic both did not make my list, but they both had.
You played them a lot?
Yeah, but I just felt like the only reason they were in my head is because they're such iconic, and it really didn't influence me as much as these other games did. So with that being said, my number 5, there is kind of a theme starting with my top 5s that my number 5 are pretty controversial. So coming in at number 5 is 007 GoldenEye.
Ooh, yes.
A lot of people could argue that that should be a lot higher up the list.
Great game.
But, I mean, what can you say? Things changed in games in August of 1997 because that's when GoldenEye was released, and that was whenever you got introduced to a first-person shooter that wasn't solely like Doom, Castle Wolfenstein, that style, and that was the first time that you could shoot your buddy in a first-person multiplayer mode. Everyone remembers fighting over playing as Oddjob because he was so hard to shoot. But I mean, that is the game that really kind of like got me into first-person shooters. Yeah. There was a few other ones that may be on the list that kind of really is where I got my start, but this is the one where that competitive nature kind of got a hold of me. That's still today playing Call of Duty, screaming at the screen, that sort of thing. I shot first. You know what it is. But yeah, I'm not going to go into too much, but my number 5, 007 GoldenEye. A quick little thing. If you didn't notice or haven't seen anything, there is a company that is basically doing a reboot of GoldenEye. They're using one of the Unreal engines. Now, granted, it doesn't look like PS4, Xbox One graphics, but it definitely is a huge increase. You can go search. They have a small gameplay trailer, and it does look amazing. I'm going to definitely have to keep an eye out on that, see where that goes. But
yeah, absolutely. That's a great pick for number 5, GoldenEye, for sure. My number 4 is going to be a game that I played, a lot. And mainly my brother, my stepsister, we would fight over playing this game constantly, and even the sequels as well. And I'm sure a lot of you that own the original PlayStation and even PlayStation 2 probably had a lot of the same gameplay time with it as well, because it's one of the staples of the system. My number 4 is a game from 1996, and that is Crash Bandicoot. Crash Bandicoot was a game where you just played as this fox-looking character. I mean, for those of you, you know who Crash Bandicoot is that play games, right? And you would just go through these crazy levels, guided the way by this sacred mass that just yelled, Pumanaga! And you would break through boxes, TNT boxes, getting chased by bosses in some of the most created levels where you would be running towards the screen while the bosses would chase you. You all know what I'm talking about. And it was so much fun. It was so addictive. You would go through portals in some of the games like Crash Bandicoot Warp to go into different worlds. It had sort of that Mario type aspect, but in just a whole other level, and obviously with being newer than when the original Mario games came out, there was a lot more they could do with it, a lot more technology behind the game. But the Crash Bandicoot series was phenomenal. I'm actually surprised that I did not buy it when they remastered it for PlayStation, because when they announced it, I was like, oh wow, and then when it came out, I don't know if it's one of those things where I'm just kind of keeping the nostalgia in the past. I'm sort of afraid to play it, and maybe I won't enjoy it as much as I once did when I was young, because we all know that happens. But Crash Bandicoot, man, I put a lot of time and a lot of hours into that game, and maybe at some point or another I'll have to go back and play that remastered version, because, man, that game was addictive and a lot of fun. So if you guys played Crash Bandicoot, leave some comments as well, because I'm curious to see how many of you were big Crash Bandicoot players back in the day.
Yeah, definitely. It didn't make my list, but I definitely enjoyed playing that game.
Yeah.
And just real quick, there's a meme on the internet. It's one of my all-time favorite, and it's basically a guy goes into an interview and the boss asks him, "Do you have any experience in a stressful situation?" And the guy's like, "Have you ever played the boulder level in Crash Bandicoot?"
Yep.
So yes, I have some experience.
Broke some controllers playing that.
All right, so
Your number 4.
My number 4, once again, kind of could make an argument for this to be honestly number 1 on a lot of lists. But this is the game that basically brought you survival horror. It was the one that started it.
Paperboy?
Paperboy, that is. No, Zombies Ate My Neighbors.
Oh.
Just kidding. It's actually Resident Evil. But a huge shout out to Zombie Ate My Neighbors. But yeah, Resident Evil 1. That is going to be my number 4. I mean, what is there like that you can't say about how amazing this game was? Especially for like two people that love horror movies. Like, you felt like you were in the horror, like you were in a horror movie. The storyline, I mean, the graphics back then, because I have played it recently, don't really hold up, but it still grabs you.
Phenomenal.
And I'm not gonna kid you. When I played it, I jumped again when those stupid ass dogs jumped through the window. They got me again, like they did when I was little. I can remember playing when that happened. I was sold. I was like, I've never actually jumped playing a game. Like, that's how like immersed you get into this game. And of course, we all know like they're still coming out today, and they still are just as good. One of the all-time greatest franchises. So yeah, my number 4, Resident Evil 1.
Can't go wrong there. Yeah, Resident Evil. What bad can you say about it? Okay, so my number 3 was on this gentleman's list already. My number 3 is 007 GoldenEye. There's no way it wasn't going to make my list as well. There it is, right over there. That baby, that's a precious game right there. If you have it, hold on to it. Yeah, absolutely. So GoldenEye, for me, I mean, today, the Call of Duty franchise, that's the game I put the most time into. But I wouldn't be playing Call of Duty, and there wouldn't be a Battlefield, and there wouldn't be all these games, honestly, without GoldenEye. Because in my opinion, it set the standard for first-person shooters, competitive gaming with your friends, and screaming and yelling at your TV that you shot first, that you shouldn't have died. I mean, it all came from GoldenEye. And for those of you who are younger watching the channel that maybe didn't play GoldenEye back in the day, whether you weren't born yet or you just were too young for games, you have to imagine this. We weren't playing GoldenEye online, right? We were playing it with our friends on one TV. So what did that mean? That means...
Stop looking at my screen. You don't know where I'm at.
That's exactly right there. So think of a cross in your TV with 4 little squares, and guess what? So say 4 of you were playing, you were one square, your teammate up here, and your other 2 friends were in the other team, or if it was a free-for-all, and you had to just assume, hope, believe that your friends weren't looking at your section of the screen to know when you were coming. You had to bet or rely that your friends weren't cheating, and guess what? I think it's time we can admit this, isn't it? Yeah. We all cheated, right?
You got pissed off because they were doing it, but meanwhile, you were doing the same thing.
Absolutely. And like John said, there was a character, if you ever saw the GoldenEye film, which is what the game was based off.
A plane.
Yes. There was a character named Oddjob who was very small, like maybe 4 foot tall, and everyone always wanted to play him because he was so much harder to shoot because he was waist level. But the game was just phenomenal. There were different game modes like teams, free-for-all, first to get the golden gun, which if you got the golden gun, it was a one-hit kill. You could put it in paintball mode, so when you shot your friends, they were covered in paint. It was just so much fun. Absolutely.
They had all kinds of different mods, I guess you'd say, back in the day.
Great map design. My personal favorite, and what all of my friends played, was a map called Facility, which you could drop down from the vents, and there was a bathroom. I don't know why everyone loved this bathroom, but it was the funnest thing because you could open all the stalls. So me and my friends would hide and camp in the stalls, and when our friends were coming in, they'd sit there and, look through the stalls one by one. Are we going to be in there? And we'd pop out and shoot them, even though they already knew what stall we were in because they were peeking at our damn screen the whole time. No, I'm kidding. We didn't do that. But GoldenEye, I mean, just a phenomenal game. It really got me into first-person shooters. There's no doubt about it. Without GoldenEye, who knows, if I would have continued to like first-person shooters. It should be on everyone's list that played it back in the day. It's that great of a game. GoldenEye, my number 3.
All right, so my number 3, much like what he just said about GoldenEye being a first-person shooter that got him into first-person shooters, this next one is the game that truly got me into first-person shooters, where GoldenEye got me into that competitive multiplayer. But without Doom, there would be no other first-person shooter.
Yeah.
This is the game I spent so much time. Back in the day, I'd throw my headphones on, listen to some Slipknot, and I would just destroy demons, save the world. It's also one of the first games that my parents said, that might be a little bit too gory for you, so it was one of those that I would sneak to play it for the longest time until I did get older and I can pretty much play whatever. But yeah, without Doom, I would not be playing first-person shooters. Like, I don't know what it was when I first started playing that game. Just the gore, just the, like, granted the controls were a little wonky, but I mean, it was just such a beautiful thing to, like, a 10-year-old little boy to just watch monsters explode. And, like we say all the time, we're huge horror fans, to feel like I was saving the world from, like, this demonic invasion. Like, it just was incredible.
And you played on PC, right?
Yes, I played.
See, I never got into Doom back then because I was never a PC player. So out of curiosity, because Quake was out around that time too. So was Doom and Quake something that everyone would go back and forth and play, or was it sort of a rivalry? Like, if you're a Doom player, you're not a Quake player, because that's like with Call of Duty and Battlefield today, or Call of Duty and Fortnite. Like, did everyone play both, or was it kind of a rival?
You didn't really have a rivalry. You had, like, a preference. Like, I preferred Doom, but back then you didn't really have a whole lot of difference. So, like, I played both.
But you preferred.
But I preferred Doom. I preferred, because Doom, yeah, Quake has a horror element, but it's more of a sci-fi type.
Yeah.
It would go towards like the Halo-esque of, like, a storyline, to where Doom was more of, like, where I found
blow 'em up, explode.
Yeah, blow 'em up. Like Duke Nukem was another one back then. But like Doom was the one out of all of those back in the day that really. So just real quick, we're gonna pause this for a second. I just want to go into. I started out on PC games. It's been stated before. I started on Commodore 64, played Atari and Television, and then of course got to the ones that pretty much everyone knows, Nintendo and stuff. Where Cameron
started out with Nintendo.
Yeah.
So I've never been a PC player. I've owned computers, of course, but I've never been a gamer on PC. So when it comes to PC stuff, he's gonna definitely be the guy to go to with that. I've always been a console player. I know I'm a pleb or whatever you want to call me, but the console has always been has been my go-to. But you definitely. PC in the early years. You still do a little PC
every
now,
so
but
often, yeah.
You've more so gone to console as well.
Yeah.
All right, so we're on number 2, correct? Yeah. So number 2, this is a little bit advanced. It's not necessarily young childhood. This game came out in 2001, so this is from my early teen years. This would be the most recent of the games on my list. So I was like 13. But this game, there's no way I couldn't put it on my list, because the amount of hours that I put into this game and the influence this game had. Before this, I really didn't play very many action RPGs at all. And I just so happened to stumble across this game renting it at Hollywood Video one night. And from then on, I became obsessed with the sequels, with games that were like it. My number 2 is Baldur's Gate Dark Alliance. Now, Baldur's Gate, of course, started as a series on PC. And, of course, being that I wasn't a PC player, I never played it. And it is a pretty vastly different game than what the Dark Alliance series is. But the Dark Alliance series is something they created for console, and it is a hack and slash action RPG where you pick from various characters, whether it be a dwarf with blunt strength, an archer who has range skills, or a mage with a lot of spells that they can
lightning
cast.
Bolt.
Yes, lightning bolt. But you would just go through these levels doing quests, whether it be retrieving things or to clear an area of monsters or rodents, and you would hack and slash your way through. As you killed enemies, they would drop gold that you can use to buy from merchants and stores, or they would drop loot like armor and weapons that you can get to upgrade. Anyone who's played RPGs, you know the style, but myself and once again my friend Cody, we played this game for years, and we would even go back to it from time to time, even in our early 20s, just playing and playing, because it's a game you can easily go back to. It still holds up. There's the sequel, Dark Alliance 2, which is just as good and has even more characters to choose from, and it even led us into a series made by the same developers, Black Owl Studios, game series Champions of Norath and Champions Return to Arms. Basically the same style game, but you can fully create your characters in those. Man, we put so much time into it. The Baldur's Gate Dark Alliance series is by far my favorite action RPG series ever made. I wish that they would either remaster this series today. I know they did come out with it a few years later on GameCube and even the original Xbox, but I wish they would remaster it today, or at least find a way to continue with new sequels. I know Black Owl Studios went under, and a lot of those people converted into Blizzard. But yeah, I mean, I would love to play. You don't get enough action RPGs today. You hardly see them
Not really.
at all. So you know,
it's a dying genre.
it is, and you know, I would hold this game standard with any other action RPG out there. It's phenomenal. If you've never played the Dark Alliance series and you still have a PlayStation 2, or if you can get a GameCube or Xbox and you're into that type of game, trust me, give it a whirl. It will not disappoint. But that's my number 2, because man, that series really opened up the floodgates for RPGs for me.
Yeah, I can definitely. So when we make these lists, we don't go over like what's on his list and what's on mine. So
fun
I'm
that
finding this like out at the same time as you guys are. Well, actually, while we're making this is when I'm finding out. So it's kind of funny that my number 2 is Baldur's Gate,
Get out
the
of here.
PC version.
Wow.
So
That's crazy.
I can remember at a really early age, around 3, 4, sitting on my dad's lap, playing like true old school Dungeons and Dragons, advanced D&D games on the Commodore 64, and that's where my love for these style games comes from. But the one that I put so much time into is Baldur's Gate on the PC, Forgotten Realms. It is vastly different, like he said. It's not an action RPG. It is a true bird's eye RPG. Full create your own character. You can have up to a party of 6, and like there's a lot of thought process. Like you can't have 6 fighters. You kind of have to think. Like you need an archer, you need a thief. Try to figure out how you're playing. You want to be able to pick locks. You want to like be able to backstab. You want to have someone that can really talk. So there's a lot more to it. But it is basically the same concept of the RPG. You have quests, side missions, your main mission, stuff that you can do to get experience points, random caves to explore to find the best loot. If you ever played like these style games, you know what the concept is. Level up your character, get as big as bad as you can, and then just save the damsel in distress, save the world, whatever it might be. So yeah, my number 2 is also
crazy.
Baldur's Gate,
Crazy.
but it's slightly different from his.
Yeah, that's crazy.
And also that kind of spawned. It did have a sequel, Baldur's Gate 2 on the PC, and then you went into Icewind Dale, and then some of you actually might currently be playing something that spawned from what he's talking about and what I'm talking about, a combination. If you ever play Neverwinter on, it's a free-to-play game on, I believe, Xbox and PlayStation. That is actually based in the same realm. It is a Forgotten Realms game. There was a Neverwinter Nights game, and that's kind of what transitioned into what you. It's kind of a mashup of all of that. So.
Yeah, that's crazy that we both had Baldur's Gate on there. I would have never imagined it, but yeah. So I think we're down to our number 1.
Yeah,
the
number
number
1.
1 game that influenced us. Easy pick for me. There was no competition here. This happens to be a game that was also on this gentleman's list. This game, man, it's hard to put it in words from the first time I played it. My number 1 game of all time as a child, and even my favorite franchise growing up, and even till this day, the Resident Evil franchise. But in this case, we're talking about Resident Evil 1, because it was the game that started it all that I played as a child. Resident Evil 1, 1996. I would have been in 4th grade, and I remember sitting in class with the kid next to me. His name was George. Not that that matters, but his name was George. And George said he was recently, we were talking about video games, and he said he recently got this game where you're in this mansion and you're playing with this cop guy and you're going around shooting zombies and monsters and it scares the crap out of him and you have to solve puzzles. And him and his dad were playing it and they can't figure it out, but it scares them to death. And I was just like, what is this game called? And he couldn't remember. He's like, I forget. So I forgot about it. Needless to say, once again, Hollywood Video. So I brought that up with an earlier game. We used to go to what they used to call video stores, kids, back in the day, and we used to rent games and movies, whoopity-doo, and we'd have to take them back.
That was my high school job.
Yeah, really?
Yep, I worked at Hollywood Video in high school.
And then we'd have to return them in a few days, and we'd cry that we don't want to take them back, and then our parents would let us keep them, and then we just build up this late fee, and that's why there's no video stores anymore today. But
well, no, Family Video is still
there's a few
there's
out there, isn't there? I think there's one Blockbuster left too.
There might be,
but saw this game with a zombie on the cover, and I was like, I started reading the back. I'm like, that's got to be it. So I rented it. Needless to say, there would have been too many late fees accruing over that one. So my parents bought it for me, and man, no game ever had the impact on me that Resident Evil did. And I'm sure everyone knows the concept of Resident Evil, but just in case you never played the original, you play as members from a STARS team, Jill Valentine, Chris Redfield. Your helicopter crashes. You're going in to look for a STARS team that went missing. You go to this mansion and outside of a fictional town called Raccoon City, and once you get in there, you find out this mansion is inhabited by zombies and then plenty of infected creatures. There's so much, going on, and there's such a big story to it. And no game at that time had that good of graphics at the time that it came out. Just story, gameplay, and just overall scares. I mean,
and it wasn't just to the point of just running around killing things. Like, you truly had to survive. There was puzzles you had to figure out. Like, it wasn't just gratuitous violence. No. Like, it was just
total
perfection.
Dread. And every room you went into, you didn't know what to expect.
There was cutscenes when you're opening the door.
Yes.
You're like, oh shit, what's on the other side?
The music, like John said, there were sequences where you'd be walking and these infected dogs would burst through windows. Later, there would even be giant tarantulas.
The crows.
Crows, zombies, hunters, which were these big green monsters that came later in the game. And honestly, the one of the things that blew me away the most with Resident Evil, because I didn't know how far things would get, is you actually stumble at one point in the game into an underground laboratory where there are great white sharks you have to battle. And shark movies, like killer shark movies, are some of my favorite creature flicks. Obviously, yes. Jaws, as stated in our first video, my favorite horror movie of all time. And so when I saw that there were killer sharks in this game, it just topped everything off. And it spawned, in my opinion, the greatest series ever made. Not just the greatest horror series, but the greatest video game series ever made. The amount of hours I put into Resident Evil and all of the sequels that would follow. Not all of them good, but most. Man, this game blew me away. And for those of you who say, man, I was too young for Resident Evil 1. And John said earlier, it doesn't hold up very well now. Don't worry, because it is remastered on PS4 and Xbox One. And even if you have a GameCube, you can play the remastered one on GameCube. And guess what? It will blow you away. The graphics are phenomenal, and they even added more story elements to the game. A few side missions to do that are scary as hell. So if you've never played the original Resident Evil, or if you've never played the series, start with the first one and play the remastered, because it's just as good, if not better. And I promise you, if you're a fan of horror and video games, you will not be disappointed. But hands down, not to keep rambling on too much, number one, Resident Evil.
Like I said, whenever I put it on here, I can make an argument for it to be my number one. But honestly, this guy probably knows my number one because I talk about it all the time. My all-time favorite game, hands down, this will never change. And the game that I've put more time into than any other, and it is also a franchise, and that is well, of course, Diablo 1, but the entire Diablo series is my all-time favorite. Once again, this is another game that I played on PC. Both Diablo 1 and 2 I played on PC, and I did play Diablo 3 on console, and I am one of the... I think that it transferred over to console beautifully. I don't have a problem with it being on console. I know, like, when it first came out, there was a big controversy. A lot of, like, the fanboys thought, like, Diablo, that's a PC game. It can only be on PC, but once you get a controller and how they did it, it was incredible. But Diablo 1, when that first came out, like I said, I love RPGs. I love the old school Dungeons and Dragons. I like action RPGs, hack and slash. This game, like, I also love loot grab games, so Destiny, that kind of thing. But this game is what really did it perfectly. I don't know exactly what it is about this game, but there is not a single flaw. It's so immersive. The changing levels, like, so you can keep playing this game over and over, and the levels are always different. It has an ever revolving engine that basically changes how the map layout is, where the monsters spawn. So it's not like you run through it once and you're like, oh, I know where everything is, I can do like this real quick. Like, you have to keep thinking, like, trying to find where it's at, trying to find the best basically farm, play this like hardest level that you possibly can over and over until you can get full sets. Like, it wasn't just find like this unholy like sledgehammer. It was finding full sets that gave you different attributes, gave you different skills. The story, the graphics, everything about this game is pure perfection to me. There is nothing better, nor will there ever be anything better. This is one of the games, this is actually probably the only game on this list that I would play until I am dead and buried. The original one still holds up to me.
Did you have a favorite character? Or would you play as anyone?
I would play as any of them. I've always been in any style RPG. I've always liked playing as an archer. I like playing ranged. I also like playing magic. I think a lot of that is because when growing up, I played with my dad. And my dad, for whatever reason, always loved to play the dwarf with the big battle axe. And a lot of times he would just run in and start like slashing, and next thing you know, he would be surrounded by a bunch of things. So I always like to be on the like outside so I could start like
I'm
basically
your dad.
safe.
I'm your dad in those games. Like, I would always play as like the warrior, or like just the brute force guy that didn't rely on spells but was the hack and slash. And when I would play with my friend Cody, like whether it be Baldur's Gate, he would usually be the spellcaster that would stand back and actually be smart about it. Like, all right, I gotta save this dumbass. All right, I'm gonna kill these creatures. Well, I think I'm doing damage, but he's really the one hit.
Yeah.
That I'm your dad.
I was more of an area effect type. But my all-time favorite character in the Diablo series wasn't in the first one, introduced in the second, and of course was added to the third one. That is the Necromancer. The reason I like the Necromancer, he was a very well-rounded. You could play him as a melee hack and slash. You could play him as a ranged, and of course he had some incredible magic type, doing summonings. But I mean, there was nothing better than Necromancer, corpse explosion, kill a bunch of people. Next thing you know, those bodies are basically landmines. You just have the whole map just blowing up.
That's awesome.
So yeah, Diablo. I could go on, do a whole video solely on this game.
Yeah, these games influenced us.
Yeah.
I mean, but I think definitely, guys, leave in the comments too what your favorite games were growing up, and if you agree with us, share us some of your best memories of any of these games. Were you a big Diablo fan? Were you a big Resident Evil fan? If you played Baldur's Gate, did you play it more on PC, console, both, or do you have one preference over the other? Definitely let us know what some of your favorite games are, because man, there are so many out there. Like when you mentioned Zombies
so many,
Ate My Neighbors, I'm like, that was so close on my list.
There's a lot of honorable mentions that we could do.
I don't know if we should say it out loud or not, but I know we talked about this a long time ago, just when we were talking about games in general. Aladdin on Super Nintendo. Aladdin
and Lion King. The two hardest games ever created, hands down, Disney games.
Yeah, but Aladdin, like, I would be embarrassed to say the amount of hours. I mean, obviously we were young, but That
I
game
still
was
play Aladdin
phenomenal.
today every so often.
And
I'm not gonna lie, I still have it on Sega. I still play
and
it.
it's getting remastered.
It's-
It's getting I don't know if they're going to really do anything to it, but it's supposed to be coming. That
Yeah.
and The Lion King are both supposed to be coming to PS4. So I'm too old for that. I definitely won't be downloading those.
Well, it definitely will be. I'm not even gonna try to joke around. I will be. Those games still today.
Yeah, they were
Yeah.
great. So there's just so many to choose from, but overall, that's cool. We had a lot of the same games on our list, and that's pretty neat. I'm sure a lot of you guys probably had similar games, and I'm sure there's a lot different because there's so many out there. So definitely let us know.
Yep. And once again, you have been watching Now Showing with John.
And Cam.
Stay tuned for the next episode.